Welcome to the Path to Productization webinar. My name is Arto Kiiskinen. I'm from a company called Efficode. And together with me today, my co-host is Dan.
Hello, everyone.
A quick introduction before we go ahead. My career has been that past 7 years I've been a product leader coach, so coaching product managers, product owners, in addition to agile teams and organizations in the agile transformations. Before that, I was working 20 years, first in 15 years in Nokia and then 5 years in a smaller company. So that's a very quick introduction. And if Dan, you would introduce yourself.
Of course, Arto, thank you. And I'm really excited to have Arto here, someone who's much more experienced than I am in all these topics. So hopefully is guiding the discussion. But yes, hey, I'm Dan Kurum. I'm based in Helsinki here as well. But you can tell I'm not Finnish, so I'm from a nice town called Norwich in the UK. My background, I'm a product strategy and kind of product everything coach now, but I've come from working in multitude of different product roles, whether that's head of product and development and product marketing, product management. And this is a topic that I'm really passionate about on how we get to productization. So excited to talk about this today, and thanks everyone for joining.
Yes, wonderful to have so many people online. And some ground rules, if Dan, you move to the next slide. Use the question and answer part of the Zoom for questions. And we encourage you to ask questions also during the presentation. Dan will be running most of the presentation part. I will be monitoring the question and answer part. And then whenever there's a question, I will stop Dan and then we'll discuss. You can have also questions at the end, but we have always seen in our webinars that it's good to ask the question instantly when we are talking about it. For the materials, just send us an email. You have our emails now on the screen. So after the webinar is done, if you want to get access to these materials, just send us an email. That's it. I think now let's go ahead. Dan, please.
Thanks, Arthur, and yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I really hope people ask questions as we go along because it's an interesting topic to me at least. So hopefully everyone else finds it as interesting. So the path to productization. And what is this webinar about? And what are we trying to let you know during this webinar? Well, at the end of this webinar, we hope you know what is productization, at least our definition of it, and we hope you agree, and the difference from projects and project organizations. And that's really important because we've focused this whole content on someone switching or an organization switching from working mainly and predominantly on projects and project delivery to then building up products and productizing their organization and what they're selling to customers. Then we'll talk about the journey towards having products in your business or organization and where the best place to start is. And finally, the impact on your organization, everyone around you, not just what you're selling and what the customers are buying, and how you can start to shape that and design it as you start on this journey. So I guess what we have to do first is set some terminology and ground rules in what we're talking about, because these terms and topics, they're kind of subject to opinion and viewpoints. So we'll set it straight how we're talking about these topics. So first, projects versus products. What's the difference? Well, how we're defining what a project organization is, it's not based on what you're selling and what you're delivering. You could be working on building houses and infrastructure and bridges, or you could be on the cutting edge of robotics and technology and AI. How we're defining a project organization is that usually you have one customer or particular customer cases and different projects, and you're building something that you will hand over the keys for to the customer organization at the end of that project to run, and you say, here you go, we made this project and delivered this for you. It's now yours to run. You can maintain it and use it how you wish. We're moving on to a new project. Now, it might not be black and white, and there may be elements of different service and support in that. But if that's the main thing that the organization does, that's how we've tried to clarify and bind that as a project organization.
And critically here, most project organizations rely heavily on the customer to do the definition of work, the requirement, and the prioritization. So, when you think about product organizations, that's totally different. But in project organizations, you have to rely quite heavily on the customer, a single customer typically, to have power of, for example, priority decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And your single customer wants you to fulfill their specific unique requirements for them at this time, which is another big difference that, you are making something custom for them that they've specifically defined. And that's a difference to what we're going to explain as a product organization. Thanks, Arthur. So, projects, now we wrap those up. What do we mean by products? And what we mean by product might be different to what someone else might define it as. So we'll walk you through this. And if we walk through this kind of expanding flower of the product that you can see in the middle of the screen, and we'll use a phone as an example to explain this as we go along. If we think of the usable product that's in your hand, in your pocket right now, that's the phone, that's the device. You're using it, you're operating it, you're calling your mum maybe. But then we start to think, is that everything? Is that the total product that you've just bought? Well, no, it came in a package. It came with a SIM card that you might have actually bought from someone else. It might come with, a set of headphones. It might come with insurance and Apple Care if you have an iPhone. So now you've got a bunch of different things added on to even how you get the usable product. And those packaging elements, as we define them, change the product that you're buying. You might decide, I prefer this package, and therefore I will take a different usable product. No, nothing changed in the features of the phone. You might just wanted more minutes in your SIM plan. And that's where we've defined those things as part of the product you're buying. And then going up a level, even, what is the total experience of the product we're getting? What is the total product? And in this advert for iPhone, they said life is easier. So that is one of the things we're talking about, total experience of why you're choosing this phone. It's easy to set up interconnectivity with your Mac and your AirPods, and everyone else has iPhone, so it's easy to get on the iMessages and iCloud. And that's your total experience, as well as, they want you to think it's cool. Apple's the cool thing, the kind of up there thing, the top society thing that you're trying to buy. Now, all of that encompasses what you've bought as a product, and that's why all of that is encompassing what we're calling the total product.
Maybe one comment here then is that many organizations who are still in the project way of doing business, they find it perhaps even quite difficult to define what exactly our product even is. So maybe this exact questions, which is the title of this slide, what is the product? What is our product? That is maybe one of the first questions that you should be asking when you go to the path of the productization. So what is our product? Because there can be multiple different alternatives.
Yeah, and what is the experience we're giving to whoever's going to buy it? Maybe that's another question to ask as well. And where do those meet? Really good point. Now, if we expand this, just because we think this applies to every different kind of product and talk about different product areas. Let's think of cars. Okay. Again, the usable product here is literally the car I'm getting into. I turn the ignition on and I start driving. And that used to be how car companies competed. They're like competition. Ford builds a car. Toyota says, "Hey, we should have a car of that size, 4x4, or a micro SUV, and that's how we're going to compete. And maybe we'll put a better radio in our car." And still, at the end of the day, you're still driving something with four wheels. And we use Tesla here as the example, but we highlighted less of the car, but more of the charging network, because that really identifies one of the reasons Tesla grew so fast is they didn't think of just as making a car. They thought, what is the total experience as a driver? What does a driver need to do? They need to fill up the tank charge the car. They need to maintain it. How are you going to buy a car, even as your total experience of being a driver? You're going to go to a dealership and negotiate and be worried you're getting a bad deal. They reinvented the whole experience of car ownership and managed to grow their market share a crazy amount. And then finally, another like a very different kind of product. Let's use a cup of coffee from Starbucks now. What is the usable product? Well, it's the coffee in the cup. Maybe you have the cup in the packaging, or you might include it as part of the product, but that's the usable product. And what is the real difference between me going into Starbucks to get that coffee versus putting my kettle on and having an instant coffee? Maybe the taste is a bit different, but at the end of the day, maybe similar amount of caffeine. Well, they talk about the whole experience. You go into Starbucks, you get a friendly smile. They're going to write your name wrong on the cup, and everyone's going to have a laugh about it. And you're going to be in a nice, cozy coffee shop and send some emails or read a book. And that's your total experience of that coffee. And you're paying maybe 100 times premium on your home coffee to have that experience of coffee. And we include the total Starbucks shopping experience as that total product as well. Okay, so a few examples. Now we've really highlighted what do we mean by a project organization and what do we mean by a product. When we have discussed this with Arto and we've seen project organizations moving into this product approach, and we worked in them as well, and we tried to think, where are the main places that they fall down along this path? What are the pitfalls that they're not looking out for, or speed bumps on this journey? Well, we saw these two scenarios before they started productizing, or before even we started productizing in these organizations. It was very positive and, blue sky, blue ocean thinking, saying, okay, you know what, this is the best idea ever. If we build it, people are going to be lining up to buy this. We just have to build it right now and invest in it. It makes so much sense. It'll change our world. And then the journey starts. Then you start going on this path. And you think, oh, this is much harder than I thought. I just made this product, but now, like, what are sales selling? Why are they selling that? I didn't tell them to sell that. Who signed this off? Like, they didn't even read the spec. The customer wants this feature. That wasn't part of the technical specification or what they were buying. How do they think? Why do they think we'll configure it for them? And all these questions start to come up, and you kind of go down this path of like, what are we doing? Why did we do this? And Arthur and I, we want to avoid these pitfalls as much as possible.
Why do you think, Dan, this feeling before this journey starts is so positive? What do you think is the main thing leading into that?
I've thought about this, and I'm not an expert in psychology, organizational groupthink, and whatever, so I can only use my own experience of I joined a company having worked mainly in project management. I did all the project management qualifications and courses, and I knew 100% right, this is how you make the most out of a company and a business by doing good project management. And I joined a product organization. And I thought my ideas were great because this is everything I knew in my head pointed to this direction. And then I'm like, why aren't you prioritizing the feature that my customer wants? And why aren't you, but this is correct. I've used all my analysis and methods to prove that this is correct. And I think from my experience, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I never had that experience of, okay, I did portfolio management, multiple projects, but having this entire market to adhere to and serve and prioritize the most important feature for everyone that can be used rather than my project and how am I going to make the most out of this. So
Yes.
that's my personal experience. I just didn't know or have the experience, or my eyes were just not open to that world.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. That's kind of like the market in a nutshell. We have one question from Petri. Is the product definition here based on customer perceived value or manufacturer's best understanding of the value?
Oh, very good question. I can maybe bring us back to that slide to answer that question. So is the product definition here the customer's perceived value or the manufacturer's definition of that?
Yes.
Was
Yeah.
that the question, correct? Yeah.
Manufacturer's best understanding of the value.
I I'm going to be annoying and answer with both because when you're building it, you have to have a snapshot and have that perceived value of this is my understanding of what you asked for. And then you give it to them. Whereas once it's in their hand or once they've paid for it, then they really get that value. And if it depends on the stage of the product you're at, that okay, if you're going from iPhone 14 to 15, that's less of a shift. But if it's a totally new product, it's only once someone's really paid for it and got it in their hand that they think this was worth it or not. So it's the constant meeting of whoever's producing the product and whoever's kind of using that experience. And if you can meet on that path, I think that's the winning point. I think
Yeah.
if those two things are very far apart, that there's your problem. So
Yeah.
hopefully that answered a bit. What do you think, Arthur?
Yeah, this is a learning experience. So, when you go from projects to production, you start looking at the market and what you don't know. Yeah, it's a learning experience. It's a learning path. So you will find very quickly if those two things match or not. But excellent question, Petri. Thank you.
Excellent question. Actually, that is something we're addressing as we go along on how can you find the meeting point of those two perceptions of value
Yeah.
as quick as possible so that you don't go down the wrong path. That is something we'll definitely cover. So I'm glad you're interested in that. Where were we? We were up here. So we're talking about there's going to be pitfalls for project organizations when they're on their path. But what are those pitfalls going to be? Well, the first thing is there's going to be pitfalls related to your products being very similar to your projects. Now, what we mean by that is when you're trying to optimize a project, one of the key things is, well, I'll standardize the bits I do all the time. And standardization has this really good image of maybe this is productization. I just need to standardize everything, but it's kind of a hidden pitfall in a way that if you focus solely on all the things I can standardize and then sell, you forget that when someone bought your project, they were expecting the customization. So you might have gained a bit of benefit from the standardization, but this customization and the requirements, they all continue to change. And you may have standardized something that repeats, but your very next project might not need that standardized thing. So focusing too much on that keeps you in this kind of project approach. And similarly, when you measure success, similarly, you might be measuring all the efficient things that I can standardize, but other time, cost, quality. If you continue measuring your success with those things, you'll go some of the way to having good products, but product metrics they're a whole different ballgame. You know, there's no start and end at the beginning with a product. There's a life to it. And I mean, sometimes there's an end, very bad products, we all know those. But really, that's what we're talking about. You measure success differently. And kind of a final one, when you have kind of products and projects that are kind of similar, you're adding this complexity to your organization. Like now your salespeople, your marketing people, your operations who deliver the product, like, well, am I customizing this? Am I doing the standard thing? Or, you know, what did we sell? What did they buy? And this complexity is a pitfall because of this journey element of going towards productization. Another pitfall, then moving on from this, more related to the people in the organization behind this journey. You know, you have momentum in your organization. You might be building towards best practice projects, for example. You might be building towards, you know, a huge skill set that you can do projects in many different areas and industries. Now you want to go to products. Even if you change the hierarchy and the job title, you change someone's job title to product manager, you haven't changed the person. They still have their own skill set. They still have that same mindset of the momentum they were going in and the culture that was built around that vision and goals. And what you write on your paper and your catalog as your products changes much faster than that mindset and that culture. Similarly, you need to train and coach the people and the dynamics and relationships that form not just internally, but now with your customers. They were expecting customization projects fulfilling their needs. And now you're saying, I have to fulfill everyone's needs, so I'm not going to prioritize what you're asking. That's a different relationship and dynamic to manage. And you might lose customers, but gain new ones, and you have to be prepared for that. So we've covered the two pitfalls for project organizations. We've talked about the products not really changing from projects and this organizational element to it. I think now we've
Then
set.
there's one question here.
Awesome.
Is SaaS offering a product? And what is the difference in productization approach when working with the cloud-based SaaS service compared to a more traditional product like an
Yeah,
iPhone?
really good. Really good example. And so Arthur and I, we've both worked in SaaS businesses, and it for the first part of the question is SaaS offering, can that be a product? Was that the first part?
Yes, yeah.
I have worked in SaaS businesses that are both products and deliver projects at the same time. And the point of me using that answer is to say that there's probably not a black and white of projects and products. There are SaaS elements and technology businesses that do a bit of both. But I would say that the part of the product, and let me use an example. Let's use really famous examples like Oracle, SAP, even Salesforce, HubSpot, these different platformy SaaS businesses. They're super technical and they're SaaS because you have the software and you're buying it on a monthly, yearly subscription. You have a support level involved in that. You can buy just the standard product. You can go online, well, not with SAP and Oracle, but with Salesforce, HubSpot. You can go online, sign up, click purchase, enter your credit card details for a few users, and I've got the standard product. And therefore, that probably falls into our definition of the total product experience. But what you can also do with Salesforce, for example, is you can buy someone who will do a project to customize this really complex product for you and bundle in different products all together in this platform experience. So you're still paying SaaS for the product and the licenses, or if you don't want to call them licenses because you're SaaS and on the cloud, you can call it something else. But you've also paid for someone to do a consultation project to implement it for you. So there's a sliding scale if that's not a cop-out answer and that answers the question. And what was the second part of the question, Arthur? Sorry.
What's the difference in a SaaS product productization path compared to a traditional? We can touch on this later on, of course, also.
Yeah, maybe we save that one for the end because once we're talking about the path, then we can talk a little bit about the differences between physical and software and such, if that's okay.
Yes.
Awesome. So, hey, thank you for those questions. Really good. And it slows me down. So apologies for my speed. I get so excited about the topic. Now that we know the project organizations, the definition of products, and we're going to try and avoid these pitfalls, what are we saying that productization means for these organizations? For us, the best way of describing productization then means you are pivoting your business. Now, often business pivots are heard of in the startup world where someone's trying and failing and disrupting in these new crazy sectors. But every business that's going on this journey that affects many parts of your organization, what is it if it's not a pivot of your entire organization? And some examples of these productization business pivots could be if you look at the usable product, whether that's SaaS or phone, and you're changing the technology, or you're zooming in on certain set of features and saying, this is my product, or you're changing your product to be a platform, you have an app store or so forth. And what we're saying is a business pivot is if you change that usable product, you have to change your packaging. And then you have to change your total product experience and how you talk about your total product experience, which means changing your marketing message, your sales message. So you're pivoting a lot of areas, not just your product in R&D. Similarly, if you've changed any of the usable products, or even let's say you've gone from projects, which are low volume, hopefully a high enough margin, and you're doing a few at a time, you're now trying to sell and you do sell to 10 customers a year Now you're trying to sell a product to 1,000 customers a year. That's a volume change. Your business model and the margin you're going to get is definitely going to change based on that. And how you grow and which channels you sell through are going to change based on that. So again, you've changed your whole business. You've changed how you sell, how you market, how you operate and deliver your product, and probably how you support it. And finally, if you do any of these changes, you might actually have changed your whole customer segment. You no longer deliver to the customers who are looking for custom things. You're delivering to the set of the customer segment who are happy to take off the shelf, out of the box with a little configuration. Business pivot again. And to give you a really real example of this kind of business pivot, now no longer talking about the actual product and in use, let's look at the sales organization and the sales growth strategy and how you get revenue. In a typical project company, you've got this sales-led growth. You're going to get your salespeople to focus on the top level decision makers. You're going to have this long sales cycle where you play some golf with them, take them out for dinner, invite them to a few webinars. And you're going to want your project organization to deliver, if you're a software company, deliver that software into the customer because it's too complex for them to do it themselves. That's our project approach. Let's talk about a product company and the really far end of product companies. Let's just take these online tools. Let's take Zoom or something like that. We're working on Zoom right now. Now, that's focused on the user. I can download Zoom, start a meeting, set up a webinar, and I don't need a salesperson. I just have a credit card. I can have a frictional access to the tool because if I don't have an easy way to set up this webinar, I'm going to use another service. I'll use Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, and I don't need technical support because it should be straightforward enough and match my experience of these tools. Now, these are very black and white, but we know that most companies or organizations sit in the middle. But just looking at this change to productization, you can see that this is creating a different type of organization completely. A different type of capability is needed in your sales or pre-sales people and in the capability of your help desk and support chats and so forth. So very different organizations for this business pivot.
And most importantly, if we look at the row on the bottom, the product-led growth strategy, focus on the users and practitioners, focus we talked previously about the market intelligence, understanding the market needs. What we need in product companies is product people, meaning product managers, product owners, and they need to be skillful. They need to have the skills to analyze the market, have the contact to the customers, and to be able to run experiments and get information on the market. But also, they need to be empowered to make big decisions. And this is a rather large change in the organization's power structure, which I think is one of the reasons why maybe the organizational inertia pitfalls of what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And that summarizes it up really well that when we're productizing and going down this path, we're having a business and organizational pivot. An organization can mean training, hiring, different skill sets, different relationships, and understanding that this is the size of pivot you're making can help prioritize the work that we're going to do and help us along our path to productization. Okay, we can begin on the path. And what's the first thing to do when you start a journey? At least I consider myself as semi-organized and I try and plan my journey, especially if I haven't been somewhere before. I want to get there as fast as I can. And I know that if I don't plan it, I might get lost. I might get in a pitfall, I might, run out of fuel and so forth. I might not have enough snacks and I need to make a pit stop. If I plan that better, I'm going to get there faster. So let's look at this path. And Arthur and I, we wanted to use the product life cycle to explain your productization journey as well, because they're very similar when you think about it. So when you think of a product's life cycle, what's that going to be? Well, you're going to go from an idea stage, your light bulb, You're going to think about it. How do you solve this problem? You're going to build it. You might code it with software or so forth, or, put it into a factory. Then you start shouting about it and launching it and getting people to use it, and then hopefully making bags of money from this. And we're looking at the axes here where you have the profit on top and the investment on bottom. And we need to understand with every single product we make, there will be investment at this point. There will be a time where you've been investing and not getting profit out of this, and therefore coming back above the line. But we do want to, if this is an S curve, you want to have the curves smaller, less of a dip, so you can maximize the time in profit. And how do you do that? Well, you go on the journey, and from the very start, you think about which ideas do we have, the opportunities, where should we invest, and is there a market for this product? We talked about the market earlier, understanding the total experience, and do customers want more coffee shops or do they want more homebrew coffee? And that means you know which one you're investing in, and therefore should already start reducing your investment curve down into the dip. Once you've started on that, part of your investment is validating quickly that, okay, this is the right investment. And if this is the right time to do this launch. We talked about, timing and whether a market is ready for change and should we be doing this now? And then as we're validating that, we're actually building the tool and making the tool be built in the best way possible, most efficient development and coding practices if it's software. And finally, what we're developing is not just the usable product, we're also developing the total experience and how we talk about it, the sales message, the marketing message, the user guides for support. That's all part of this investment. So we want to do that, all of this investment for the total product experience as well and as efficiently as possible. So then we break off above the curve and we start to think about, now I've got this asset, how do I monetize it, get value from it, maintain it in the best way possible?
And a couple of things from this graph is obviously for product business to be successful quicker, you want the development dip to be shorter and more shallow, not as deep. So that's, again, something for the product people in the organization to figure out. How do we experiment? How do we get the results and confirmation that this is exactly the features that the product needs, and we need to implement it in this order, and then release as fast as we can to be able to start gaining the money back earlier. So again, we need product people. We need to be able to enable them to plan, to roadmap, the order, the priority, where to implement these things.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think there's one bit, I don't think this is a disagreement with that, Arthur. This is an add-on. I would say that yes, you need the product people. That can just be someone responsible for doing all of that thinking, but you definitely need the rest of the organization thinking in this product way as well. You
True.
need salespeople helping the product people to be like, okay, here's how we can sell this in the best way possible. The marketing people with the message, understanding what the users are saying and everything, need to definitely help those product people. Yeah,
Yes,
you don't want to
agree.
silo this.
Everybody
Yeah.
needs to be pulling into the same direction with the productization. So, and we'll come back to this one, and there's actually one question related to it, but I'll take it up later on.
Okay, cool. So yeah, let's keep this product lifecycle in mind and now think about the same curve, but for productization. Now, color changed a little bit to signify that we're now talking about productization. Now that we think about opportunities on what we're going to productize for our organization, we can start thinking of, okay, here's the opportunity, but I have an opportunity cost. I can focus on people to continue doing projects, or I can take their time into productizing. What's it going to be? Is it worth doing it? And which of these ideas has the best kind of impact for my organization? Similarly, you're developing the change throughout your organization. How do you manage that change in the right direction? How do you manage getting the market knowledge and these capabilities, the product capabilities that Arthur was hiring? And how do you do the trade-offs in, I want to do this in the best way possible for maximum impact? That might mean not an entire whole user-friendly range of products, just really narrowing down on investing in a certain part of your area of your business. And finally, maintenance. You're maintaining your new product assets, but you're also thinking about maintaining and making the most of these new products management skills and the value that you're giving to your customers. And how do you maintain that in your organization, similarly to you, how you would maintain a product itself and support it for your customers?
And again, with the same graph, we are trying to make the dip shallow and short to be
Yeah.
able to prove to the rest of the organization that this makes sense. It's a valid direction for us.
Absolutely. And we'll come on to investment in a bit, but the sooner you can prove that this makes sense, the more support and the more money you'll get for to invest in this change, and the faster everyone will come along this journey with you. So really good point. So that's the path you're on. The productization path is very similar to the products path. How do we get started here? Well, to go on this path and to bring us back to this metaphor of going on a journey and planning our journey, how do you plan a journey? I plan it as I look at the direction, I look at Google Maps, and I think which are the blocked roads, what's the fastest route, where can I stop off for a nice meal on the way? And my direction in that journey is similar to looking at the market that's available. That's the kind of end point, what's available there, and my strategy and how fast do I want to get there, and what I want to give to my shareholders, my stakeholders, my employees. What is the strategic direction? Secondly, do I have the fuel, or have I charged my car? Seeing as we were talking about the Tesla example. And the fuel here is the investment that you can put into this change, into this journey, and your capability to even make it. Am I even a good enough driver, or should I take the bus? So let's talk about these points on planning our journey. The direction planning. How do we plan that? Market knowledge, it's something that almost becomes a bit buzzwordy, these total addressable market, serviceable obtainable market, TAM, SAM, SOM. And we talk about knowing these things, and having the knowledge of what's available out there. But often the pitfall here is the markets change, they change super rapidly, and we need to make sure we're moving in the direction, but also understanding we need to keep getting this information in and adjusting our direction and planning for it. And I use the example of a Nokia phone here. A Nokia phone, and apologies to the Finns with Nokia trauma, but I think it's a great example of this smartphone from Nokia now has Android operating system running on it. And let's just look at the markets there. Nokia used to be in the phone market, which is just the device pretty much. You called, you texted, you played Snake on your phone. Everyone was happy. And then smartphones came along, and Nokia tried to go into the smartphone market, and it didn't work out. Why so? Well, you're no longer in the device market. Where does so much of the kind of benefit and total experience from a smartphone come from? It's the operating system, the apps, the stores, App Store, Play Store on Google, and Google and Apple dominated that market and almost monopolized it. And at the time, perhaps people knew at Nokia or they didn't know, but they didn't know how much that would grow this total addressable market of users they could get through this kind of domination of this app store monopolies in a way. So the market changed rapidly. They might have thought, okay, our addressable market is how many people can afford a phone device, but not how many people can get connected to all these apps and how much they're willing to pay for these apps and different experiences with this phone. So what are we saying here? You can assess this market knowledge, but you also need to assess that it's a moving target. And it's good to do the TAM, SAM, SOM understanding, and especially the what is obtainable for you. Remember, we just talked about, your capabilities. So the serviceable obtainable market at the bottom there. Can you actually get this practically off the ground and get any of that market share before you start competing? Understanding this gives you a direction. Okay, I know I want to go in that direction and hit that market, even if it's moving all the time. Next, what's my strategy? And we segment the strategy into An offensive strategy, kind of you're attacking, you're trying to grow, you're trying to capture market. And examples of that in the long term, let's think about ChatGPT. They invested a lot on this long-term bet that they could get the technology for large language models to work in a way that they can acquire a bunch of users over a longer period. Billions of dollars investment, very long-term investment, offensive strategy, new market, new product. Copilot came along on the kind of coattails of ChatGPT in a way. I won't go into the politics between the two companies, but they knew ChatGPT blazed a path. They can kind of fulfill that same needs as well, capture a bit of market, know it's a bit more predictable in the short term. That was an offensive move to grab market share, and that's their company strategy for a long-term change or a short-term change to grow for their company. Now, a defensive strategy here could be, oh, we need a new strategy to stop losing our customers and users. And therefore, Instagram here on the top right here, they had to fight with TikTok, so they made Instagram Reels as a competitive response to not lose users. And that was their thing. We want to contain our market share, and therefore they were on the defensive. And Adobe Creative Cloud, this comes back to our SaaS example from earlier. Adobe, they used to sell licenses and software that you downloaded onto your computer, change their whole infrastructure to go to this SaaS cloud-based model because they could see that is the market of the future and how people will purchase for this total experience for these kinds of products that they're selling. It was a defensive move. They didn't want to lose customers, and they could see a bit further ahead that if they didn't change, this wasn't going to end well for them. So they invested a lot in renovating their whole infrastructure set.
So the point being, do I understand it right? The plan is that you need to think about these strategic things, and you need to think about what is your serviceable, obtainable market going to be with your first steps into the product world to paint a realistic picture of how it's going to look like. How is your journey going to look like?
Yeah, and I think the key word you use there is the realistic, because remember we came back to the pitfalls where everyone's happy and thinking, if we build it, they will come. And this is the first dose of realism. It might be realism or it might be validation that you're onto a winner. And I'd like to take this positive look that you can check this as a first step to know that actually we need to go even harder. We can go even more offensive onto this productization change. This is not about saying that this is a bad idea, but this dose of realism this provides, it reduces that investment dip, right? If this makes sense, if you can obtain that market easily and it fits with your company strategy, you will reduce that investment dip for your product.
Perfect. Yeah.
Good question.
Like it.
The fuel for my journey. Okay, well, I need fuel, and one of the best things to burn is money in this world. And the key thing from this quote is, your R&D spend is the lifeblood of tech companies, but an R&D spend is just the lifeblood of product companies. This is the fuel you're burning to build really good products. And if you don't have this fuel or you're not set up to spend this kind of money, you need to reevaluate your journey and just look at the biggest product companies in the world and the amount of R&D spend as a percentage of their revenue and the amount of revenue they have in the first place. Just to think, if they're spending that much money to stay competitive and defend their market, that's their strategy almost. If you're going to break into this space, the amount of investment you need to break into these spaces, it's going to be huge. These companies spent billions to get big. And
so this is another realism check that's, as if we play the project business, you still might be spending 20% of your revenue into, for example, your people, your salaries, but they are doing projects. Now you're thinking, how much of that can we dedicate to building products? And then we are losing a little bit on the project side, and this is a conscious decision. This is the dip. And then, how to make it realistic that this is what the organization can live with.
Absolutely. And every idea is a good idea until you have to spend money on it, right? So it's a good check. It's a good way to prioritize your ideas as well and how much you want to spend. And Without going too much into it, there's the classic investment methodology of 70, 20, 10, of 70% of your R&D spend goes on your core product for your company. So if you're a project company, 70% of your spend actually going on improving your projects. And then let's say 10% would be the moonshot of a new product altogether. If you want to go on this journey fast towards productization, probably need to flip those around, and the amount more money you're spending on productizing than improving your projects, and the impact that'll have on your business in the meantime might be quite big. But yes, you need this investment for sure. And the second part, and this is also kind of investment related, but this is very much on your people and your organizational capabilities. You need different capabilities to deliver projects and products, and then probably a bit of both during this transition period. And as a project company, we talked about requirement gathering. You react to fulfill the requirements for one customer. Your assets you're maintaining are maybe your skills as people and your brand. And your sales is happening in this kind of sales account management way. When you start to do products, you still have to do all this stuff, but now you add on proactive fulfillment for market needs. As Arto said, you need product people who can kind of bring all this together. Your assets you maintain on top of your brand, now you might have some data infrastructure, you might have like marketing assets and sales messaging. And your go-to market also includes reorders and stopping churn. That's why you need customer success. And if you're doing all of these together, then you start to blend in multiple capabilities of your projects feeding into market requirements. You might have a SaaS business that you've implemented in a complex way, and then you need to go back to maintain that asset for the customer and for yourself, version control. And the way you sell, you need to sell what you're going to build, your roadmap. I will have this feature for you in 12 months' time if you sign on for the product now. Very different capabilities that are going to be fueling this change. And just a quick analysis here, clear direction, a full tank of fuel, like absolutely go 100% ahead for this change. What are you waiting for? If you're in the orange and at least one bit's a bit unsure, that doesn't mean stop it and go back to projects. It just means, hey, let's think about this again so that we don't overinvest in the wrong area. Or we need to build our vision further, maybe think bigger or think smaller. And probably it's going to be very rare for companies and organizations that you have no direction and no fuel for this. Everyone has this capability, but if you're really there, then just re-examine a bit and plan a bit and go back to the drawing board with where's the market, where's our capability, and build your way up again.
So when we were in a minute ago, you're saying about 70, 20, 10. Maybe if you are in the top right quadrant here, what are you waiting for quadrant? Then you might be actually go ahead. 70% of our spend goes into productizing. But if you think you are a little bit on the orange areas, then you need to be a bit more careful.
Absolutely, really good point. And who can answer that question for you? You need your whole organization. When you're talking about this much R&D spend and budgeting and allocation, that cannot be happening in a subdivision R&D organization. This needs board level, director level, VP level, whatever you want to call it, everyone bought in. And the better you can paint the picture of the direction, the market and its readiness for your product, probably the more fuel you can get, the more people, the capabilities, and investment money that you can spend on it.
And we don't have a GPS in the productization path, so you need to perform experiments and get market feedback and market intelligence. That's the only way. So like lean startup style, lots of experiments.
Absolutely. And a good segue into the next section on what to prioritize, because we want to reduce that investment dip, don't we? So we need to prioritize.
We have about 8 minutes to go if we have some space for questions.
Of course, yes, we'll keep going. So let's look at what to prioritize. And now let's look at the total product experience and an iceberg where we view as most of the money is below the waterline. And that's where we need to invest. And the usual MVP comes exactly there. People build a usable product, they manufacture the usable product because they think, surely I can't make any money without making this perfect. And what we're saying to prioritize here is the total product experience. I guess that's not so surprising after everything we've been talking about, Arthur, but bringing what you're prioritizing and developing for your product to the surface that people can see it, talk about it, critique it even, but spending a year locked away in a laboratory to build this usable product and then nobody wants it, that's going to hurt more than a little bit of upfront realism and criticism. What do we mean by that? Well, to use this term, minimum viable productization, that's a mouthful. Um, you can do this whilst working on projects, really. You can be working on projects and thinking of market analysis and buyer persona, user persona understanding. You can be putting in place a way to prioritize ideas and analyze them transparently with your total organization. Involve sales to analyze this idea and marketing and support operations. You can design this customer journey and this map of their total customer experience and speak to the customers about it, saying, hey, if we made this, would you buy it? People might say what they'll buy differently to what they'll actually spend money on, but it'll give you a good indication. And when you start to build these product assets, you can start build these activities into your projects. Like, how do these metrics work? How can you analyze this project in a similar way? How do you collect the data that can then help build your product? And then eventually, which minimum part of my projects, if that's what I want to productize, can I productize in this way? And almost start using that in your projects as this kind of first step to gather feedback and more market knowledge and reduce that investment dip.
And this is what the product people in the product organization would be doing. So it pays a little bit to start this learning journey earlier, and then also building the processes and tools that support it. Of many organizations do not have efficient product tools like road mapping tools or backlog management tools and so on. And these can really undermine the efficiency of the activities.
Absolutely. Good point. So, talking about the organization, then, we've built up to this is going to be a long-term organizational transformation, but with short and immediate results to tell you you're going in the right direction. So, don't be put off by this long-term change. We're just talking that if this goes well and keeps going well, this is what you're going to look out for in this path. And we've talked about you have this idea and you know there's a potential path. What's the first thing you're going to do? Well, you need to analyze it a bit, build that business case. And that business case we'd recommend with this kind of cross-functional team to form. Some product people, project people, sales, marketing, maybe some externals come in to help you analyze this idea to productize. But if you're spending more than a couple months on that, then think about, okay, are we getting somewhere? Then you make this decision. Yes, we have the direction, we have the fuel. Announce the pivot decision, get buy-in from people in your organization, already start working on that inertia that you have. And then we start doing this minimum viable productization early. And we've used this term a cross-functional product crew. Maybe Arthur, this is one of your favorite terms. Do you want to explain what the product crew is?
Yeah, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
just
Let's talk about that
quickly.
first.
So product crew, this is what we mean. It's like get all the needed skills, all the needed roles from the organization: sales, support, marketing, design, production. If you're doing hardware, also logistics and factory floor, everybody into the same room. This is like an expanded team, and all these people need to be informed and with you on the journey in the same boat. And this is a little bit into Mick was asking questions earlier. What is the experience that we've had with product organizations and team topologies, team composition? not going to go deep into team topologies if you meant Matthew Skelton's book type of thing, but this is the thing that we see that is working well. You have to have from every function representation when you are talking about productization. You cannot leave this to be R&D only. That's the main point. And maybe everything, but we have time right now on this. But this is really important that you get representation from every function.
Awesome. I'm glad we could answer that question as well. So let's just hop back. You've got your product crew. There will then be some inertia as you go on this journey. And with these minimum viable productization and early stage product wins and champions forming, hopefully you can overcome this inertia and troubleshoot it. Now, going on to organizational design, a little bit of this team topology thing, you can design your future organization based on what outcomes you want to achieve. Do you want to be the product leaders here? Okay, we can design for that. Our teams can be product crews on a bigger scale. Do you want to design for efficiency and put in something like scaled agile framework because of your kind of existing business hierarchy? You can design for that now that you know that this is really going to work for your organization. And then finally, this will normalize. You'll become a product company eventually, and you can start growing and optimizing, adding ops functions, product ops, dev ops, sales ops, and keep going down this path.
And this will typically take from at least 1 year to 3 years, maybe 5 years. So it's not a fast transition. But now I think we're running out of time. So if you have any questions, now is the last chance to shoot them our way, and we will be showing them, answering them very shortly. But very quickly, Dan.
Yeah, so just before those questions come, as a summary, there's no right or wrong to productization. There will just be much more harder work and much more investment in one way, and there will be then the kind of right work for you. And the harder work will be if you underfund it, over expect it, don't think about the market, and don't think about your whole organization to support it. That's going to be hard. And the right thing is you work on the right products for your right time. Every function adapts, and you stay fluid, but keep your strengths to what made you a really good project organization.
Yeah. We have one question. How do we see AI helping in this productization process, and where it would have the biggest impact? What would you, Dan, say to that? How would AI help, and what would be the best place to use it?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good question because the world is changing. If you're talking about AI as a tool for you to use rather than building AI tools, that's how I'll answer the question. It can go a few ways. It can definitely help you make usable products quite fast if you're in the software world, right? It can write code for you as long as you have people who can code, so you can quickly build MVPs, test them, get them back, and that's more efficient. But it can also bring you closer to the market. If you have only a small one product person who's trying to do market analysis, it can maybe be a way to be like test hypotheses using AI and the data that it can analyze rather than relying on teams and teams of analysts. So I had to do that very quickly, but there's definitely an efficiency element for how quickly you can build products and therefore productize and prove what's right, or how connected you can be towards the market. Those would be my two main things for AI.
Yeah, and very quickly, I've seen and seen customers also. Product managers can use AI to help in the requirement definition, in the acceptance criteria definition. So in very low down in the AI use scenarios, but those add efficiency into the work of definition and what the product needs to be. Even if you don't trust everything the AI gives you, it gives you food for thought. So it speeds up the refinement part of the productization work. So I think that's not to be forgotten when you think about AI. But we run out of time. Excellent questions. Thank you for everyone, and thank you for coming. And thank you, Dan, for running the excellent presentation for us. And reminder, if you want the presentation material, send us an email, and we'll keep these emails here on the on the screen for a minute.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And of course, if there's questions we didn't answer, you think of them later, also send us an email. We're happy to talk about it. We just love the topic so much. We're happy to do that. But thank you everyone for your questions, answers, and for joining us today.
And the recording will be made available both very quickly in a few days into EFICode webinar site. It will also be available in YouTube slightly later, maybe in a few weeks. So if you want to share this webinar to your colleagues, then you can use that. Excellent. Thank you. And I hope to see you in future webinars as well.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.